Also, try to fix your face. You look like a rejected character from an old key visual novel. We opened on Tsubasa, sleeping in his birdhouse. Dude, doesn't your room have that nice comfy looking futon in it? I mean, if you'd used that, you could have avoided this rather rude awakening. Okay, so previously we did get some flack for suggesting a ship between these two, and you know, if anything, we try to avoid offending anyone, but you know, if there's an obviously offensive joke to tell, then we'll tell it.
I need an adult.
I am an adult.
But yeah, right off the bat, they established that this was going to be an Ageha and Tsubasa episode, where the main conflict boiled down to Robin trying to prove that he was a birdman who probably could become a lawyer. And with that, the four finally fulfilled the prophecy of the opening and got in Ageha's freaking Hummer and went out for a day of hiking. Also, yes, this is a Mitsuru Aoyama episode, hence some of the animation that was clearly made by just one guy who refuses to give up the ghost. We already did our one joke in the opening, but it is worth mentioning that some parts of this episode clearly weren't done by him, which we will point out when they come up. Anyway, the purpose of this trip was twofold. One, obviously recreation, and the other...
Is that how you feel about me, huh? You think I'm a kid?
I mean, to be fair, Tsubasa is more of an adult than the dude who tries to punch himself. Also, this is one part of the episode that does bar me a little, but more on that later. Anyway, they arrived at the hiking grounds, where they were also having an interesting little promotion.
That's racist!
But yeah, are we just gonna gloss over how this bird clearly looks like a member of Tsubasa's tribe? Like, for all y'all know, the organizer could be a bird person too, but you're not going to look into it? Okay. Anyway, the promotion was a quiz challenge where I'm guessing they'd receive some special goods if they answered a survey at the summit of the mountain. And since the princess seemed to have a thing for birds with beards that are actually kind of gross IRL, they decided to take up the challenge. Also, yeah, this mountain was called Mount Rosso. Get it? Because it's Sora backwards.
I don't get it.
As it turned out, there were two paths. One meant for more casual hikers, and the other meant for more seasoned hikers and/or hot-headed anime leads. Guess which one Sora picked while striking Mashiro with her. With that, Tsubasa, Ageha, and L took the casual path, and I'll admit this simpler dotted face sequence does have a cute charm as opposed to Aoyama's usual stuff. And speaking of Aoyama's, the first riddle was a ridiculously cliched one right out of the pages of Gosho Aoyama's Detective Conan. I mean, I don't know who did first, but the trick here is always that the animal called the tanuki is also a homonym for remove the ta in Japanese. That said, it did lead to an interesting moment for Tsubasa, who was at the disadvantage of not being familiar with the animal, and still likely learning Japanese grammar. Thus, it was impressive that he figured it out just by using logic, but he was still disappointed when Ageha seemed to figure it out before him. This back and forth between the two would continue as they reached an obstacle course that only Tsubasa participated in, as it appeared to be entirely optional. I mean, maybe it was required for the riddles, but it wasn't very well established. Regardless, the non-Aoyama animation here was really well done, and probably the best sequence in the whole episode, even when compared to the upcoming fight scene. It especially got across the suffering of the poor little birdie, which just added more friction between him and Ageha, not helped by the fact that she kept calling him boy, even though he had asked her not to. Yeah, I'll say right now, one of my biggest issues with this episode was how they didn't really portray Ageha in the best of lights. I mean, I won't say she comes off as an outright jerk or anything, but it also does little to justify a bond forming between her and Tsubasa. Not only does she not respect his request to not call him boy, but for no real reason, she didn't explain why she'd want to go off the course to figure out the second riddle. I mean, it's not as though I could have just have told him that I wanted to get a better view of the field that's likely part of the riddle, but welp. This led to Tsubasa going ahead and running into Sora and Mashiro. The latter tried to explain how Ageha's distant attitude was her own way of showing affection towards others, and how deep down the two were similar, at least in terms of wanting to protect L. Not a bad scene, but again, I do feel like this lady is playing up the mentoring older sister role a little too much, especially with someone she only just got acquainted with. I kind of hope flaws like this will be brought up in an eventual character arc for her later, but for now, it's not totally selling me on these two becoming friends, much less eventual teammates. That said, I will praise this nice little bit of visual storytelling as Tsubasa saw what was likely Ageha and L's gondola and decided to give chase. And the two were there to beat him at the top. As for why they knew he was coming, well, happenstance, yeah. Anyway, not too surprisingly, the reel referred to admittedly a very pretty rainbow wing that the fields formed that could only be seen from up high. However, this was of course interrupted by the pig, whose final episode will hopefully be next week. Also, dude, you really should lay off the donuts in the break room. Just saying, there is a weight limit to these lifts. And through a really cheap little cut, he took Ageha and L. Tsubasa tried to save them, but the monster used the two as a meat shield. Moreover, even if there had been an opening, he couldn't do anything while they were sliding down the ropeway. Thus, Ageha took things into her own hand. Ageha, don't steal Yayoi's gimmick. She's a mangaka. She knows how to file for copyright infringement. Nah, of course, this was a trick to get the monster to let him go, and honestly, I'm just surprised he didn't let go of his rope hand to really highlight Kabuto and his monster's stupidity. But yeah, this did lead to the most believable bonding moment between Tsubasa and Ageha, as the latter gave him a clear signal as to what she was planning. With that, we got the second best sequence of the episode, as Tsubasa and the monster had a very brief but pretty nice exchange. I still like the obstacle course a lot more for being longer and having more variety though. And after this brief sequence, things were quickly wrapped up when Sora and Mashiro joined in and double rider kicked the monster, and oh Jesus! Yeah, if y'all are using Tsubasa to attract male audience, maybe you shouldn't animate stuff like this. But anyway, the fight ended with Tsubasa delivering the finishing blow for the first time, though really it was just more of a mercy kill. With that, they wrapped up their day by winning the bearded bird goods that I kind of hope they don't try to sell IRL. However, this wasn't the end of the episode, as finally Kabuto was visited by his boss, who I'm still gonna call Nightmare Moon, especially since she's coming out at night. Sure enough, she was there to give the pig her final ultimatum and ended the episode on a pretty badass note. Man, of course, the cameo cure this week was Hana. Hey, congrats on scoring that role on To Your Eternity, by the way. You did a great job. Compared to last week's filler episode, this one was just kind of meh. Obviously, Aoyama's one thing, but the writer of this one was Konomi Shugo, who, yeah, I think I have to admit, she still needs some seasoning. I mean, it wasn't bad per se, and probably a required little bit of character building for Ageha and Tsubasa, but I do think that they didn't quite reach the peak. Going by the opening, it's still very likely that the eventual core 4 of this team will be split up into 2 sub-teams. With our original duel having already been very strongly established, they should try to build up the B team. And after this episode, they probably need a little more work. I mean, sure, it is a very different dynamic between the first main team male and adult cures of this franchise, but they should try to establish some more believable bonding between these two. And sure, while Tsubasa trying to be an independent bird was a hindrance, I'd argue Ageha was a little more at fault by being at times needlessly distant, especially during that second riddle. Then again, the general pacing of this episode did feel a little off and just didn't give these two enough moments to really work off each other. Though, I guess appropriately, the best and probably only really significant bonding moment came during the climax of the battle when they worked together to literally escape the monster's grasp. If and or when they do fight together, I do want to see more stuff like this. All that said though, I think in general, the show does need to refocus on the main plot involving Skyland and the still unseen antagonist. After that final scene, I'm at least really intrigued to see what Nightmare Moon can bring and what sort of conflict she can provide for Sora especially, if certain theories are to be believed. Some of the next episode titles are suggesting we'll get back on track, so I am looking forward to it. But for now, overall, this was just a meh bonding episode between the bird and the Hummer lady. Hopefully, there will be more adventures between these two, where the latter will stop calling him boy. By the way, sorry if I sounded a little more off than usual. I'm just kind of recovering from a little bug. don't worry, it wasn't that bug, and I'm already through the worst of it, but it did mean that we lost some time to work on our next big project, which will be a quick little overview of a weekly series that we recently finished, but hopefully we should be back on track this week. So do look forward to it, and until then though, for now my friends, and hold on. Hello?
I want to play a game.
Oh, well, I'm not sure if I'll be able to make it because I kind of have to quarantine myself. That is, unless you want me to spread the beer bucket your little game. The benefits of actually being sick.